Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey channel. Today we're going to do a quick video discussing how the draft lottery went, and I'm going to give you my first mock draft of the season to see which players could be going to which teams in the draft come this June. With all that coming up right now. Hello and welcome to another video here at the Internet Hockey channel. So as we know, May 8th is the draft lottery, and it has now passed. So it was definitely an interesting draft lottery. As I discussed in my blog post before the draft lottery began, over the past couple of years, there hasn't been too much change to the draft lottery since they brought in the new rules of only going to 2 draft lottery spots instead of 3, and dropping the amount of people who could possibly move up to first from 16 to 11. So with that, a couple of years ago, only Seattle and Anaheim's flip-flop spots, with Seattle getting second and Anaheim getting third. Last year, the Devils jumped from 5 to 2, dropping the other 3 down a spot, and while Montreal and Buffalo were able, in those 2 years, to hold on to the first overall pick. Montreal getting Slavkovsky last year, Buffalo getting Power the year before, but this year it was a little bit different, a little bit interesting. We went through the first few picks, they were all the same. Nashville remained 16, Calgary remained 15, Pittsburgh remained 14, Buffalo remaining 13, Ottawa's pick remained 12, so that does mean that Arizona will have 2 top 12 picks in this year's draft. As due to the conditions on the Chikrin trade, Ottawa's pick did not end up top 5, meaning that Arizona will end up getting that pick. So Arizona's going to pick 12th with Ottawa's pick. Vancouver remained 11, St. Louis remained 10, Detroit remained 9, Washington remained 8, Philly remained 7, Arizona with their own pick remained 6, and Montreal remained 5, with San Jose remaining 4. So up until the top 3 spots, everyone had stayed the same, so not too much movement there. But there was one really big jump in the top 3, as in that top 3, the Jackets, who had the second best odds to get the first overall pick, dropped from 2 to 3. So just like we saw a couple years ago with Anaheim, the team who had the second best odds to go and get the first overall pick wound up moving down a spot. So still, I think Columbus is in a really good spot, just too bad they didn't get a top 2 selection. And then the Ducks, who had the best odds in the draft, a 25.5% chance of getting first overall, actually dropped to 2. So the worst ends up getting second. So I still think Anaheim's going to get a really good player in this draft, but they just aren't able to get Bedard. And then the Chicago Blackhawks, who were originally had the third best odds to select Bedard, go up 2 spots and are going to take the first overall pick. So the Blackhawks leapfrogged Columbus and Anaheim, and they wind up with the first overall pick. So I just don't think it's any surprise they'll probably be drafting Bedard. Bedard's going to be a phenomenal talent, probably McDavid level talent. So the Hawks get themselves a generational talent in Bedard. And after moving on from Kane at the trade deadline this year, and Taves not being brought back in the offseason, as they've already announced that, they moved straight from Taves and Kane to Bedard. That rebuild started this past offseason when they moved guys like DeBrincat and Doc. They did really bad this year. They had the third best odds for the first overall pick, and they wind up getting it. So the Chicago Blackhawks move from third to first in the draft lottery, and they are going to be taking home the first overall pick. So now that we know the draft order, we know who's going to be picking where, I'm going to do my own mock draft. So in my mock draft, I don't think it's any surprise that at number 1 I have Connor Bedard going there. Bedard's a generational talent. He had a phenomenal season over in the WHL, putting up 71 goals and 143 points in 57 games with Regina. So definitely did really good over there. He's going to go to a Chicago team. The Hawks team doesn't look good right now, but if they can add a couple of pieces, continue to add there. They have a couple of good prospects like Reichel, Nazar. On the defense end, they have a guy like Korshinsky. So they have the makings of an extremely good team, and Bedard is going to speed up that process. So Hawks are most likely going to get Bedard. I think it's almost a guarantee Bedard is most likely going to go to Chicago. I think it'd be an absolute surprise if they didn't go and get Bedard. So Bedard's going with number 1 to Chicago. He's going to be a phenomenal talent, top-line center, top-line playmaker. He's going to be a phenomenal piece for the Chicago Blackhawks. And as they transition out of Taves and Kane, they're going to transition right back into another good generational talent in Connor Bedard. Next, with the second overall pick, is Anaheim. So the Ducks don't really get good luck in the draft lottery, but they do only move down 1 spot, and they're still going to take home a really good player, in my opinion, as I have them taking Adam Fantilli, number 2. So a lot of people have Bedard as the consensus number 1. A lot of people have Fantilli as the consensus number 2. Fantilli had a fantastic year over in the NCAA, over in college. Had a huge season this year, putting up 30 goals and 65 points in 36 NCAA games. So it's really hard to put up over a point per game in the NCAA, and Fantilli was almost averaging 2 points per game. So Fantilli did an amazing job the last year. I could see him definitely probably make the NHL roster next year, Maybe he goes back for another year of college, but I could definitely see him be an NHL player next year, playing with guys like Zigra and McTavish. I think Fantilli could do wonders to that team. So he is a center, so I could see him maybe slotting right behind Zigra on the second pair. Maybe they move Zigra to the wing. Not exactly sure, but I think Fantilli would be definitely a great add for the Anaheim Ducks. Third overall is the Jackets. Once again, they do not have very good lottery luck, moving one spot down. And with that third overall pick, I have them taking another top-end center, as I have them taking Leo Carlsson of the SHL. Carlsson, another good future top-line center by the looks of things. A lot of people have Carlsson going 3, maybe 4th, but a lot of people have him going 3, and I think he will be a phenomenal addition to the Jackets organization. He's a bigger forward, 6'3", so he's on the bigger side. He's definitely a really good, powerful forward. Playing over in the SHL this year, he had 10 goals, 25 points in 44 games, which is not half bad at all. I think he could definitely be like a top 6 center this year, as early as this year, maybe playing on the third line. We know that the Jackets lack a little bit in the center group. We know they have a guy like Cole Sillinger, who should be a top-line center in maybe a year or two's time. Still a good NHLer, but just not a top-line center. But I think if you have a 1-2 punch of Sillinger and Carlsson going down the middle over the next couple of seasons, they'll be a really good team. So, in my opinion, I think the Jackets take Carlsson, 3rd overall. 4th overall, you have the San Jose Sharks. I don't think they'll be too worried about the Russia stuff and his KHL contract, but I have the Sharks taking Matvei Michkov, 4th overall. Now, Michkov is a phenomenal talent. At one point, he was challenging Bedard in some draft rankings for 1st overall, but that was a while ago. Bedard has since upped his level of play, and Michkov, due to the Russia factor and his contract being long over in the KHL, still signed for the next couple of years, his draft stock has fell a little bit, but I'd be extremely shocked if he wasn't taken top 4 this year. I think Michkov could definitely be a huge addition to the San Jose Sharks roster. Sharks are in the midst of a retool, maybe a rebuild. They could try and move Carlsson this offseason. They could move a couple of other pieces. So if they do try and go towards a retool sort of a phase, they wait maybe a year or two. Maybe Michkov gets out of Russia a year early, comes over to the NHL. Maybe he can be a really good top 6 forward. I think he could definitely be one of the best goal scorers, if not the best, in this draft. So I think Michkov to San Jose would be a huge addition. He's a bit on the smaller side, but he's got a wicked shot, and I think that could definitely help the Sharks long term. So even though they have to maybe wait a little bit for Michkov to come over, I think Michkov to San Jose would be a huge addition for the Sharks. 5th overall is the Montreal Canadiens, and I have them taking Zach Benson from the WHL. Benson's on the smaller side. He's only 5'9", so he's a smaller forward, but he is a good speedy winger. Put up 36 goals and 98 points in 60 games over in the WHL this year, and I think he could be definitely a huge addition to that Montreal Canadiens team. If you look at that Canadiens team, Cole Caulfield's a smaller type of forward, and under coach Martin St. Louis, he's flourished. He looks like a really good forward now. So if you add Benson to the lineup, you could maybe even have a top line of Suzuki, Benson, and Caulfield, which I think would be a really scary line to compete against. Benson's a really good playmaker, Suzuki's a really good playmaker, and Caulfield can finish the puck well. So, in my opinion, I think they take Benson. I think just the way the Montreal Canadiens are structured, Benson will work really well with the Montreal Canadiens. Then we go over to the 6th overall pick with the Arizona Coyotes. I have them taking Will Smith from the USHL. Now, Smith is another center who could definitely be a good top line, maybe second line center in the future. It's definitely going to probably need a year, maybe 2 years over in college to continue to grow his game. Over in the USHL this year, he put up 15 goals and 42 points in 20 games, which is absolutely phenomenal. I think with the Coyotes already having guys like Cooley and Geeky at the center position in the next couple of seasons, adding Smith, that's going to be a lethal center's depth. You can have Cooley as your top line center, you can have Smith as your second line center, you can have Geeky as your third line center long term. So I don't think they'd be too wary to give him maybe a year or two over in college, let him grow. Arizona's still not a really good team this year and they're still rebuilding. So in my eyes, I think Smith would be a fantastic fit with the Arizona Coyotes. Next, at 7th overall with the Philadelphia Flyers, I have them taking Ryan Leonard, who's another player playing over in college in the USHL. Leonard is a pretty good forward, good winger, playing over in the USHL. Didn't have as good of a production as Smith, only putting up 11 goals and 20 points in 17 games. But still, Leonard looks like a really good player, I think he'd definitely be a huge fit with Philadelphia. We know Philadelphia is just about to start a rebuild, so with Leonard needing a year or two in college, I don't think they'd be opposed to giving him that time. They still have a good young guy that they drafted last year in Carter Gauthier playing in college, so I think in time they could probably have a top line consisting of guys like Gauthier and Leonard, and I think that would be a really good fit for the Philadelphia Flyers. So in my opinion, I think adding Leonard to that top line would be a fantastic addition to the Philadelphia Flyers, and I think in long term, Leonard could be a huge piece of that Philadelphia Flyers top six. But given the fact that they're rebuilding, I don't think they'd be too worried with giving Leonard a year or two in college to develop. So I think that's would be a really good pick for Philadelphia. Then we go over to number 8 with Washington Capitals. And I have them taking from the OHL Colby Barlow. Now Barlow looks like another really good top end forward. He's a left winger who put up 46 goals and 79 points in 59 games last year over in the OHL. He looks like a really talented winger. I think in time, maybe he could play with a guy like Alexander Ovechkin on a top line, maybe sort of help them out on the second line. I think Barlow could definitely be a really good piece. He's a really good, more sort of a power forward type of player, and I think Barlow could be a huge addition to that Capitals team. So, in my opinion, I think Barlow would work really well playing with guys like Backstrom or Strome long term. But I think even though he'll probably need another year, maybe 2 years over in juniors, I think Barlow would be a fantastic addition to the Washington Capitals group. Over 9th overall, the Detroit Red Wings, and I have them sticking with their trend over the past couple of years of taking European-born players in the first round. I have them taking Edward Šalé, 9th overall, from Czechia. Now, for Šalé, he's done fantastic over in Czechia. He's a really good player, put up 7 goals, 14 points in 43 games. Now, Šalé is a good winger, so he can play either side of the ice, whichever one the team feels that he needs to play. Šalé could definitely play on like a top line, maybe long term with like Raymond and Larkin. I think a Šalé, Raymond, Larkin top line would be a fantastic line for the Detroit Red Wings, or they could probably even put him on the second line, but I think he probably does need a year, maybe back over in Czechia or in the AHL before he starts to get an NHL opportunity. But I think Šalé would definitely be a really good addition for the Detroit Red Wings. Over with the St. Louis Blues, who would be picking 10th overall, I have them taking Dalibor Dvorsky, who is a center over in Allsvenskan. Now the Blues, like we saw, they're going through a bit of a retool right now. They sold off a lot of pending UFAs at the deadline. They still have a good core group there, like Thomas, Buchnevich, and Kyrou in that team, and I think adding Dvorsky could be a really good addition for them. Dvorsky's a really good center. They also already have really good centers in Bolduc and Dean over in juniors right now, who I think could definitely be top-end centers as well in the next couple of years. So if you have guys like Thomas who can play already in the center position, and then you're adding guys like Dvorsky, Bolduc, and Dean in the next couple of years, I think that Blues team could be really hard to play against. So I think I like the idea of Dvorsky going to St. Louis. He would be a fantastic addition to St. Louis's team. And while I think he'll probably need another year in Allsvenskan, where he played this past year, I think he would be a fantastic addition for St. Louis. Next with Vancouver, and I have them taking another player who is from Vancouver, and that is Andrew Cristal. Cristal was a good teammate of Connor Bedard's, and he also grew up in British Columbia, and he could be a definitely really good homegrown player for the Vancouver Canucks. He's also a bit on the smaller side, but put up 39 goals, 95 points in 54 games this past year, and looks like a really good left winger. I think he could definitely be a huge addition to the Vancouver Canucks team. So, in my opinion, long term, he could definitely play like on the top line with Pettersson. So I think if you have like a Cristal, Pettersson, maybe put Lekaramaki on that top line long term, I think that would be a really good top line. So in my opinion, I think Cristal having a homecoming, going to be drafted by the Vancouver Canucks, would be really good. And I think Cristal could definitely be a huge top 6 winger long term for the Vancouver Canucks. 12th overall, we have the second Arizona pick. This is the pick they acquired from the Ottawa Senators. I have them taking Axel Sandin Pellikka out of the SHL. Now, Pellikka is the first defender off the boards. There were some points earlier in the season when they were doing draft rankings where the first defender wasn't even until after the top 16. But players like Sandin Pellikka and David Reinbarker really pushed their ways up until the top 16, and they're at least in consideration for that. And I think with Arizona already having drafted Will Smith in the forward group, I think they add on the blue line and get Sandy Pellikka. Pellikka's a really good puck-moving defenseman. Put up 2 goals and 5 points in 22 SHL games, but looked really, really good, especially over in the World Juniors. He looks like a really good puck-moving defenseman. Could definitely be a top 4 on the Arizona Coyotes team. Arizona doesn't have too many good defensive prospects. They do have a guy like Maverick Lamoureux, who they drafted in the first round last year, but they don't have an overly abundant prospect pool on the defensive end. So I think getting Sandy Pellikka 12th overall would be a fantastic addition for Arizona. 13th overall, you have the Buffalo Sabres, and another player from college. I have them taking Gabe Perreault from the USHL. So I think he could be another good prospect for the Buffalo Sabres. Given how many good young players they have right now, they will not be opposed to waiting a year or two for Perreault to play in college, continue to develop, and then come over. Perreault's definitely done a really good job over in the USHL, putting up 19 goals and 45 points in 23 games. So Perreault looks really good. I think long term he could definitely fit in well in the Sabres middle six, maybe playing with a guy like Dylan Cousins long term. So I think Perreault could definitely be a really good option for Buffalo, and I think adding him to that roster in a couple of years' time will give Buffalo yet another good young prospect that they can use in their top 9. Then with the Pittsburgh Penguins, I have them taking Braden Yager from the WHL. Now, Yager was at some points considered to be a top 10 prospect. He had fallen off a little bit since then, but he's still a pretty good player. Definitely, his versatility is really good. He can play any position on the ice, center, left wing, or right wing, so he could definitely play really a variety of spots. He put up some pretty decent numbers last year, putting up 28 goals and 78 points in 67 games, so he's definitely shown he can be a really good playmaker. I think you put him on the top line in a year or two time with a guy like Crosby or Malkin, and he could take off. So, in my opinion, I think Yager to Pittsburgh could be a huge addition for the Penguins, and I think long term, playing with a guy like Crosby, he could definitely do really a lot of good things for the Pens. Over at 15th overall, I have the Calgary Flames taking defenseman David Reinbarker. Now, the Flames are still looking to be a team who's trying to compete. They have a lot of players who are going to be in the final year of their deal in the offseason. And while they do have a couple of good prospects in the forward group, like a Zarian Coronado on that forward group, they don't have too many good elite-level defensive prospects in that team. So, given the fact they could lose guys like Noah Hanifin maybe, Chris Tanev, Nikita Zadorov in the next couple of years, I think drafting Reinbarker would be a huge addition to that defense. Reinbarker looks like he could be a good offensive defenseman, playing top 4 minutes in the future. Probably going to need another year or two. Was playing over in the National League this year, put up 3 goals and 22 points in 46 games, so not half bad. And I think long term he could be a huge piece to that Calgary Flames lineup. So definitely, I think Reinbarker to Calgary could be definitely a huge addition for the Flames, especially given the fact they don't have too many A-level prospects on the defensive end. And lastly here at 16th overall, I have the Nashville Predators taking Nate Danielson. Now, Danielson was playing over in the WHL this past year, put up 33 goals and 78 points. It's definitely a really good player. Looks to be a good playmaker. I think long term he could maybe even switch to a wing. He is a center right now, but I think he could play on the wing and maybe help on that middle six for the Preds. We know that they're team transitioning into some of their younger players. They have guys like Novak. They have guys like Evangelista, Tomasino, who could be long-term top 9 options. Add Danielson in there, and you have another good piece in the forward group. So I think Nashville could definitely benefit from adding a guy like Nate Danielson. And I think at 16th overall, that will be a huge addition for the Predators. So that's my 16-team mock draft for the upcoming draft in June. I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. Who do you think these teams will take after the draft lottery finished this year? And let me know down in the comments how surprised you were that the Hawks came away with the number 1 overall pick instead of another team like a Anaheim or a Columbus or a San Jose. Definitely like to hear what you think. And which players do you think these teams will take in the draft over in June down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Just remember to like this video, subscribe. I also do a blog, which I'll link to that in the description below. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.